I want to welcome you all on behalf of the University of Florida IFAS Extension, our Polk County Extension Office. Thank you all so much for joining us. Just a few things before we get started with the presentation this evening on growing bananas. Just want to mention that we are an equal opportunity institution. We strive to reach a diverse audience. We appreciate your participation this evening. If you feel as though you've been discriminated against at any of our programs, please feel free to file a complaint with the USDA. You can do so by going to their website and filling out the form. You can give them a call or also write them a letter. But again, we do appreciate your participation. Next slide. And just a little bit about Extension, if you're not familiar or if you are. So we are literally an extension of the university. We are a partnership with federal, state, and local government, and we provide research-based information to the public. There's research centers throughout the state. There's extension offices in every county. And so there's lots of faculty and staff throughout the state that are working on solutions. And so we share that research-based information with the public. Main campus is located in Gainesville. And then locally here in Polk County, we have quite a bit of programming to offer. In addition to gardening and landscaping topics like this evening, we have Master Gardener Volunteer Program, Small Farms Assistance, citrus, different crops, nutrition and healthy lifestyle, composting, Florida-friendly landscaping, 4-H for youth, and many other programs. So feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And now I'll pass it on to Carol.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody who registered and came to spend a part of your evening here with us. I'm really excited about this. I've been growing bananas for quite a while. I've been a master gardener since 2005. And I'm also a master naturalist because to deal with your landscape, you need to know things about the natural Florida. And I try to incorporate both of those in what I do. Tonight, we're going to talk about growing bananas in Central Florida and Polk County. The topic we're going to talk about, or the cultivar, is dwarf Cavendish, which is pictured on the screen. That's in my yard, one of my plantings. The cultural requirements of bananas, the fast facts, and banana mat anatomy, suckers, the types, the selection, and the transplanting. Spring, startup chores. Summer is a time of plant and leaf growth. Fall is a time that the plant does what is called a shooting, which is bud emergence, which is the beginning of the fruiting cycle, and plant maintenance and fruit support. And then finally, the bad and the ugly, nematodes, insects, drought, fungal disease, and cold damage. And finally, harvesting and then stepping into the kitchen. At the end, there are a number of resources that I used with this PowerPoint, which we'll make available. So getting started, the genus is Musa. There are hundreds of varieties of bananas. There are two basic subgroups. One is Musa acuminata, which is the Cavendish subgroup, which is today's focus. And the other is Musa balbisiana, which are the plantains. The family is Musaceae, and the common characteristics of dwarf Cavendish bananas are that they reach a mature height of 8 to 10 feet. They are resistant to verticillium wilt. There we go. The fruit does not generally attract wildlife, is showy, although fruit and leaves must be managed, otherwise they're a litter problem. The fruit ripens approximately 80 to 180 days after flowering. So there's a lot on this slide, and don't worry about writing it all down. I'm going to put it at the end again for you while we're taking questions. First of all, choosing a location. You want a mostly sunny spot. The more sun, the better. They will take a little shade. It will affect the size of the fruit and the yield. They need to be on a well-drained, flat planting areas. Bananas do not like to have wet feet. And near a source of water, not crowded with other plants or roots. Just have an area for bananas. Don't mix it up with other plantings. Away from the neighbor fence line, if you live in a small lot or even a lot that's adjacent to someone else, you have to think about your neighbor, because this is a plant that has a lot of roots and they like to travel. And for aesthetics and safety, we recommend an area away from the street view in pools, because there's times of the year that banana mats are just not a pretty view. Also avoid planting close to windows or enclosure screens, because during wind toppling, these bunches can be 40 to 50 pounds. So what do they need to grow? Polk County, Central Florida soil, enriched and or amended, fertilized, organic versus non-organic. Bananas are heavy feeders of nutrients. That is not to say that you need to regularly apply extra fertilizers. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Temperatures at or above 60 degrees are when the plants have active growth, and adequate water to support active vegetative growth. And that means 4 to 6 inches per month, which is very important as a supplement during the droughting months. And again, then active management of the plants. So what is a banana plant? It's a rhizomatous perennial herb. The leaf-bearing structure is called a pseudo stem. It's not a trunk. It's not a tree. The fruit is actually a berry, and the fruits are self-fertile. They're parthenocarpic. They require no pollination. Even if you see bees visiting the flowers in the spring, they're nectaring, they're not pollinating. The anatomy of the banana mat, this is the most important thing to understand. The drawing of the mat shows the true stem, and that is the blue section in the middle that travels up and through the plant. That is the only true stem of the banana plant. The clump is formed by the fruit-bearing stem, the suckers, and the rhizome is called a mat. So this all together is your mat. In commercial plantings, the number of suckers is kept down by pruning. So caring for the banana mat, this is a brand new planting that was put in a couple weeks ago. These are my suckers in another location, and they were set aside for a couple weeks. So they had a number of roots that were already growing on them. So when you are making a new installation, you want to make sure that you're putting it in a sunny location, as we said. This is a mulched location. It's an all sun location. This is an afternoon shot. And you can see that even though there's some shading in the afternoon, that this plant is already tall enough to be higher, to reach for the sun. Weed control and mulch, inspecting for disease, insects and nematodes, and pruning the banana mat. So the future of the mat is all about selecting the correct suckers. One thing I want to encourage people to do is to sit down at your planting area and take a look at what's happening, because you will see things if you just walk by it and water it and maybe take off the leaves that are brown for whatever reason that we'll talk about. You may not notice what all is going underneath those plants. There are 4 types of suckers produced. The first is a sword sucker. The second is a water sucker. The third is a maiden sucker. And the 4th are called peepers. So of those, there's 2 that are the best to use. And maybe you have an idea what those are, but this plant, or this small sucker we're going to talk about now. And the 2 suckers that are the ones that you want to use are the sword suckers, and that is this. See, they look like swords on the small plants. Here's one. And they're nourished. You can see this is right next to the mother plant. they're directly attached to the rhizome of the mother plant. And so they're being nourished by her. The water suckers, and this is a water sucker, you can see that it has sprung up away from the mother plant. If you pulled it up, it pulls up very easily because it's not attached to the mother plant. And it has these oval leaves. These are not good suckers to pass on. You should pull these and do away with them because they're not good stock. And then the maiden sucker, which is over here, which is just a tall one of the swords in its second year growing. It's going to take the place of this one next year. Are mature sword suckers, and they take over after the mother plant fruits and dies. And this one, the peeper, while it's sitting right next to the mother plant, it's probably a sword sucker, but it's really too soon to tell. So transplanting the banana maidens. Banana suckers transplant easily. Plants should be reduced to 2 or 3 leaves to lessen transplant shock. It's beneficial to thin extra sword and maiden suckers. So transplanting the maidens, they transplant easy. It's beneficial to thin extra sword and maiden suckers. Thinning plants benefits the remaining plants and the growth of the sword and maiden suckers. A crowded mat makes banana plants share available nutrients and can result in stunted plants and reduction in fruiting and fruit size. Also, when you're planting, you want to augment the soil with some composted cow manure and with some peat moss. It holds the water a little bit at the beginning, and it creates a good base. Share removed viable maiden suckers. You can take those off. Those are the best ones to share. Always give your best. And the largest material is always the best to share. Keep one for yourself and share another one. So I also wanted to put up here that this is the basic document from University of Florida by Dr. Jonathan Crane. It is a lengthy document and has quite a few, it has everything you'd probably want to know about bananas in it, but there are no pictures. So I'm going to give you another source for things like that. The time frame from planting until fruit maturity is about 18 months. And I did say that, they fruit in the fall, or I will. And it all depends on the weather, because if you have a very warm winter and the plant is ready and mature enough to fruit, then it will, independent of what month it happens to be. So depending on your cultural practices and the initial size at planting, again, as well as the weather, because it means everything for success, especially during the droughty months like we've just experienced. The time frame may vary from 9 to 24 months. After fruiting, the mat made up of the pseudostem, the rhizomes, and the roots should fruit every year from a new selected sucker. So these are all maidens and sword suckers. And there's an oops, that's a water sucker that needs to be removed. So it's March. Let's grow these plants up. These are not from this year. These are from a previous year. This year in March, because we had such a cold and freezing winter, it was a slow start in the banana mat. But the chores are always the same in the spring. You want to remove the old pseudostems, saw them off just above ground level, and compost them. You want to thin the mat and do general cleanup. You want to add composted cow manure. You may choose to fertilize with a commercial product. I never have. And I get lots of bananas. There is good content in composted cow manure, and you have to know something about the soil of your area in which you're planting. The soil in my area was historically cattle country, and there is a lot of organic matter already there. You also want to mulch to retain moisture and enrich the soil as it decomposes, and water regularly during the dry months. That's really a hard thing to do. Depends on if you have water nearby, and otherwise you're going to be toting some water. And it's really important because your plants will still grow, but they may not grow as fast or as big or as fruitful as they would with regular available water when the weather is warm enough to grow. So adding a compost area near the plants is a handy thing to do. One thing I do, because I go outside to work, not to work, but to play. And at the end of the day, when I don't have everything done, I will stage tomorrow so that I can just get right back in the job the next day. So this is how I stage my composted cow manure at the beginning. So banana plants are growing larger for the new season. The area to the right is a trough garden, and that's my handy compost area, and it's between two banana areas. So all of my old spent plants find their way into that area, and they're shielded, and it's not a messy look, it's a nice neat look. And the pseudostems from the last year are now beginning to decay into nutrients, especially potassium, which bananas need. Watch for sprouting where you lay them in the compost heap, because even these pseudostems that have been cut off and laid in the compost heap are going to sprout. And there's one that's out there right now. I went out yesterday and took this picture, and again, this is not going to be a good pass along. This has the leaves of a plant that is not attached to the mother rhizome. But if you don't pay attention to what's growing out there, you can kind of lose control and have a lot of bananas because they will grow quickly too. So July, I mean, we come from March of just looking at plants getting their start, and then July, the rains have started and they are just growing exponentially. And you can see here that the height is, as the fence is 6 feet, the height is well into the 8 to 10 feet range. They're fast growing, and they may require frequent addition of nutrients. However, in my plot, I haven't found that to be the case. They grow exponentially all on their own. So you want to keep scouting your plants for issues and remove any yellow or diseased leaves, which when you do that, you're preventing the spread of pathogens and also enhancing the landscape appeal. Soon, this is July now, as soon as these plants have produced about 30 leaves, they are mature enough to start producing and beginning the fruiting cycle. So this is a banana leaf, a new leaf on a banana plant, and they grow one at a time. A lot of plants will grow more than one leaf at a time, but the banana plants, they grow one leaf at a time. It's called a cigar leaf. It emerges as a tightly wound growing tip, and then it unfurls into a leaf blade. The leaves emerge from the center of the plant, and that's important, because as they are growing from the center of the plant, and all of the new leaves come from there, they are forcing the other old leaf sheaths out, which makes the pseudostem grow thicker. So the older one's on the outside of the pseudostem, and the new one is always coming from the center. This is the day that you look for, and sometimes it sneaks up on you. This is the emergence of the flag leaf. And if you're out looking, I usually take a walk in the morning. If you're out looking at your plants, you will one day see this leaf emerge. And you think, your immediate thought might be, what's eating it? Because it doesn't look like all the others, but nothing's eating it. This is the emergence of a flag leaf that signals that there is an inflorescence or flower bud that's that's going to appear. And so this process is called shooting. The flat leaf of the flag leaf then is short and flat topped appearance. You're always looking for that because you know you're on your way to success. The flower bud then emerges after the flag leaf. And if you've never seen a banana flower bud, you will be astounded the first time you see the first one because they look like a giant ear of corn. And they're firm, and everything that's going to open and become bananas is inside that bud and ready to grow as it opens. So here's the inflorescence. Again, if you would look at the structure closely, you would see the flag leaf up here, and then you would see the opening bracts of the flower bud. No more leaves are formed after this time. This is the last thing that a banana plant wants to do, is fruit. That's the whole thing it exists for, is to fruit. So it emerges from the stalk that grows up through the center of the plant's pseudostem. And we saw earlier in a slide, the blue line that shows it coming up through. The flower bud is reddish purple, large and pointed. And I've had some that are close to 2 feet in size. And size indicates relative production, and it means that everything has been right. They've received water at all times, they're well nourished, they have sun, the weather has been good. The better all of those things are, the bigger the bud is going to be. So this is a new slide, and this because I wanted to show you what this stem looks like, because this is a true stem, and it comes from the bottom from the corm, and it comes all the way up through the center, and then it emerges here at the flag leaf, and then this is the true stalk that holds the bananas. It's just, I saw pictures of this done in Africa and thought it would be fun to try to do this. And so we picked a kind of small one that did fruit, and we started pulling the sheaths off. And every one of these sheaths being pulled off is a leaf that is usually, for the oldest ones, they're no longer leaves that appear on the plant because they have aged out. But it's really kind of a miracle that this structure, when the plant is ready, the entire structure at one time starts growing up through this very tight sheath of banana leaves and emerges after the flag leaf. So coming back to the structure, after this structure emerges, it turns toward the ground, and the bracts, these are called bracts. Here's one. They open one at a time to reveal individual hands of bananas. And these individual hands of bananas can have up to 20 fingers. And these are female bananas. This is probably one of the larger ones. And so the largest ones will be at the top that have the most numbers. And then, you know, depending on cultural good growth of the plant, there will be more that are numerous, but they will get smaller in number as you come down. And so this one has 20. The bract will curl up. This is a picture of one of them. They will curl up. The banana hands will appear almost one per day. It is very fast growth. And the stalk continues to grow longer as the hands are revealed. So this is just a massive amount of quick growth that's happening. So bananas have female banana flowers and male banana flowers. However, banana plants that are dessert bananas, that are dwarf Cavendish, and most bananas are Parthenocarpic. And that means that they are sterile and they require no pollination. The female flowers are at the end of every female banana called a finger. And each one of these is a separate ovary. And that's why we said earlier that they are botanically a berry. This is 1 berry, 2 berries, 3 berries. And the female and the male flowers are not open at the same time because there's no need for pollination. Oops. So these are the male bananas. After the female bananas have all been emerged, then you will note on your bananas that little tiny bananas will appear, and you'll think, wow, what's with this? You know, am I not feeding it well enough? Is it, did I forget to water it? Whatever. These are the male flowers. They signal the end of the female fruit hands developing, and they really serve no purpose. The male bananas and the remainder of the flower bud, as soon as all of the female bananas are open, they are removed shortly after the female hands are exposed. And this is because you can leave it there, but it's sapping strength to feed those male bananas that have no function whatsoever. So it's removed because that concentrates the plant growth on the female plant bananas, which are the fruit. So as soon as, you know, a couple days after you see that this is happening, this structure can be cut off right there. So during this time, when you're starting to see a lot of bananas form on these plants that are all old enough to have inflorescence and bear fruit, you'll be scouting your plants because you're looking for things that are happening. And you want to be looking at the leaves to see if there's anything going on, because it's an opportunity by looking at them to correct watering or nutrient practices. You have to just be aware of what's going on. You see that that's a pretty dense planting. I learned this from experience. You wear a hat and gloves when you enter that area. And I would enter that area to be removing spent leaves, but you'll have an unhappy meeting with spiders, their webs, for me, a wasp, and other hazards. So do not reach where you can't see, and be aware every time you go under a banana tree that there's a lot of life under there. It's a good home. And most of all, for all of your plants, no matter what it is, keep records of your expected maturity dates. After you have a mat for a while, you will know, generally speaking, when your fruits, all things being equal for weather and so forth and cold, you will know when you expect a bunch to mature. The major time when there's a good warm weather for my mat is always Valentine's Day. So in the industry, they go along with a black marker, and as soon as a banana bunch emerges, they take and they write on the stem what the date was so they can keep track. And you also want to be writing down the problems and solutions and when they happen, so that you have a record that you can be using in the next year and years that will be very helpful. That's not to say that these plants will always fruit at the same time, because some of the years, I mean, if you have a warm winter, oh, that's just the best thing in the world, because your plants are going to be shooting bananas all over the place. And it's really nice to not have to go out and cover plants or cover bunches. It's a lot of work. So we have this banana plant, and this is what happens if you say, okay, well, I know that that's a heavy bunch and I'll get it tomorrow. And then you didn't do it tomorrow. and you go back out and you see this. And this bunch was probably 40 pounds at least. The bunch weights for Dwarf Cavendish can range from 33 to 55 pounds. And I've certainly had bunches in close to that upper range. We were lucky on this one. We got the prop out, we came out, we righted it. It hadn't taken itself out of the soil. We watered it, and it made it back. So this is a prop placement. It's made out of PVC pipe. You can find the plans on the internet, and it's really functional. Holds them up. We usually have 4 or 5 of these happening during the fruiting season. And because I have a permeable paver pathway by the secondary banana area, when we need to prop something, we just, take these smaller tiles and then remove one for where we need to put this prop. So now the good, the bad, and the ugly. We already did the good. The bad and the ugly, there are a lot of things going on, problems going on worldwide for Dwarf Cavendish, because Cavendish bananas are really the basis of the world for dessert bananas. And we already lost the Gross Michaels to disease, and we really need to be keeping an eye out for disease on our own patches. First of all, you need to know where the plants you're planting are coming from, because transporting bad material is the #1 reason for disease being transported. So we're going to talk about fungal disease, cold damage, and drought symptoms. So this is kind of like a synopsis of all the bad things that can happen, because all the bad things that can happen would be another whole webinar. The nematodes, burrowing and spiraling, insects, the banana weevil, and scale are found throughout Florida. Damaged plants are susceptible to weakening and invasion by other pathogens. And this means that it's not the insect really that does the damage. It's the insect that feeds on different parts of the banana plant, which weakens the overall organism or plant and allows the invasion by other pathogens. So diseases like black sigatoka and Panama disease, which is fusarium wilt, can be spread by contaminated plant material. Black sigatoka is an important leaf disease which is promoted by high moisture and spores spread by wind. Now, most of the fungal diseases are promoted by high moisture and spores and the wind, okay? But in general, the Cavendish group is susceptible to sigatoka. In fact, it's highly susceptible and resistant to Panama disease. And the fact that they're resistant to Panama disease is not all that important in Central Florida, because at this time they're susceptible to subtropical and tropical race 4, neither of which is in Florida at this time. So that takes a little brain massaging to get through. So I wanted to, and that's really not what we're here to talk about tonight. We're talking about how to grow bananas at home. And these things are not as important to growing bananas at home, except for the fact that you could bring things in, and you should be aware of that. Also, on this page, you'll see the publication. The first publication is Dr. Crane's that I already showed you. And the second one, all of these pictures are from Penn State University. And this particular resource, which is at the end, is just the ultimate resource for looking at pictures of everything. Their picture catalog and labeling is just excellent. So here we have drought damage. And if you have bananas and you didn't water them religiously this spring because it was a long, dry spring, which is really good for tomatoes, but really bad for bananas, you would see that your plants were in fact just folding up because they're trying to conserve the moisture they have. And when they still haven't received good watering, and we still need 4 to 6 inches of water per month for normal growth and production, then you will see the desiccation on the leaf. And this leaf is no longer to well support the plant that it's on, because its ability to perform photosynthesis is probably close to none. So this is just what drought looks like. And all of these things, if you look at the pictures, you will see, you can begin to see a plant and say, oh, that's drought. Okay, so here is another issue. It's called choke throat, and it's a response to 2 things. It's a response to temperature or drought. So this plant, this is a progression from the end of March this year, no, 3 years ago, to the beginning of May. And you go out and take the morning walk and you see this plant doing what it's doing, and you go, wow, you're not supposed to be doing that. It's called choke throat. It's choked, it can't get out. And you come back a couple of days later and you see that it's made a minor move toward my side of the fence, at least. And then a few days later, you see that there are some bananas fingers that are opening, but they're pointing toward the sky. And then after they've all opened, they are all pointing toward the sky, which is bad for a couple of reasons. One, they're not under banana leaves to protect them from scald. 2, they're at the top of a fence structure where critters who are using the top of the fences, their roving supermarket, can partake of them. But these bananas still, despite all of those things that happened to them, they still ripen. So this was a success. I also had one this winter that choked, and it was going to be close to freezing that night. And I went out and I apologized to it. I said, you're not going to like the world you're coming into. And that one, because it was really open to the cold elements, didn't make it. So this is 2 reasons why choke throat happens. The female flowers during this time, though, didn't escape notice by honeybees, because here's these honeybees and it's April and there's not very much flowering. They're nectaring. They are not pollinating. They are nectaring. And there were just a lot of them. I've never seen the honeybees on the banana plant flower structures except that time. So in the summer and the fall, here's a fungal disease, and this is very, very common. These are my pictures, my plants. It's Cordana leaf spot disease. And again, these are favored by hot and humid conditions, and the pathogen mainly spreads by water splash and wind. And what's happening when it rains buckets? There's like water splash and wind all over your banana leaves. So this is very common. I have dealt with this. Well, let's talk about what it looks like first of all, because this will also give you pause that this is not a horrible thing. It's just something that happens. Your plant's not going to die. You will see an oval-shaped yellow or pale brown spot near the leaf margins, and you see that's exactly what's here. near the margin. And it's covered by a concentric zonation surrounded by this yellow halo. And this is all a necrotic or dying leaf tissue. The organic way to manage this is to remove the infected leaves and dispose of them. Do not compost them. And another thing that I do, these are more pictures of this. You'll see that it can happen at several places on the leaf. Here's an older one. There's still the yellow there, but these leaves are aging a little bit. If I have just one small area, let's say this is a small area, and you see it, this is not even at the margin, but I would just cut this part of the leaf out, because I could remove the entire leaf, but if this is the only place that is involved, I can save more of the leaf for the plant's nutrition needs by just taking small parts off, and you just peel them up, cut them off, and take the sections out. It's not hard and it's useful. In the fall, after the fruit set, you will see this fungal disease called cigar end rot. It's fungal. It enters through the flowers that are starting to dry up. This is before I knew what to do. This is before 2019. The tips of the fingers initially begin to darken and wrinkle, and the tips will become mummified. If there's only very little involvement, I would remove involved fingers, but I would leave the minimally involved there and see what happens. So one way to combat this is to remove the mature blooms, because when you do this, you are closing up the avenue into each banana finger. If the fungus is present, the fingers will weep and seal, whether the blooms are snapped off or trimmed off. I've done it both ways. You can snap them off with your fingers. It's a really sticky job. It's whether you want sticky fingers or a sticky set of pruners, but it works. It works. And these will be really healthy looking fruits. You do that at the beginning of it. Late fall to winter, cold damage. Growth slows at 60 and stops at 50. Chill damage occurs below 60. So this is a night that it was below 60, and you can see the plant's just not happy. It says, I cannot sustain active growth. So notice the tattered leaves. Those are from Hurricane Irma. Slightly tattered leaves, and this is everywhere in the literature, are thought to be beneficial. There's no reason given. I haven't been able to find it. I surmise it's because the plant is mounting a response to fight against this, and it's a robust growth response. And this is also a good, a good example of why these are not front yard or full plants to be planted in public view, because this is not, it's going to get worse than this over the winter time. And you want your front yard to be pleasant for the neighborhood to see. People will not like bananas if they see a browned and ugly banana plant in your front yard. So cold protection, allow the spent leaves, browned but healthy, to hang as insulation around the pseudostem. During the, and you can reduce the cold crosswinds by locating them in a shielded location. This is a shielded location in that it's back in a corner, and it's also against white fence, which reflects warmth in the wintertime. And during frost warnings, you want to protect your bunches by covering them as completely as possible and remove during warm daytimes. So, you're watching your plants, and, it's not a pretty sight, and you don't know if you're going to make it to February or not. Here we are at February 11th of 2019, and this was the lone bunch that we were waiting on. And in fact, they made it. They weren't pretty, but they made it. And this is all frost damage here, but the pseudostem is not frozen and did not bend over, because they'll just bend over if they're frozen. So this is the ultimate bad front yard view. If you planted in the front yard. This was an overnight freeze on 2 nights in 2018. The first was 3.5 hours at less than 40. The next night was 2 hours at 27 to 28 and 2 hours at less than 40. We had another similarly cold winter in 2022 and 2023. So as far as the growth in the fruit, the season is over. It can make great compost if it isn't diseased, but I err on the side of disease safety and dispose of it because I have plenty of good compost of other things. This is a total freeze above ground. It's a disaster to the plants above ground and the unripe fruit, but the plants will come back from the rhizomes and any protected suckers. So this is an instance where having those small suckers covered with mulch is a good idea. And as soon as it warms up, you would want to uncover them. Harvesting, you harvest your bananas when the fruit is filled out and the fingers lose what they call angularity. And that is that when they're all coming out of the bloom bud, they have these little, they look like little squares, you know, because they were folded together. And then as they grow and fill out, you will see that they start to look like the grocery store bananas. You can harvest the whole bunch or hands from the top, and that spreads out the need to use and distribute all at once. The other thing about this time of year, you have a lot of things for us in February, but it has happened at other times of the year. Depends again on the maturity of the plant. It does it when it's ready. If you leave the fruit on the plant too long, animals will come after it. Fruit will split after heavy rains, just like tomatoes, and or the fruit will rot, which encouraging feeding by insects. And this is like, oh no, I was going to have to say gnats and rats, because the rats will come at this time of still cold weather because there's still not very much out there for them to eat. And they find the PVC pipe props to be nice avenues to climb up to the bunches, unfortunately. So, you know, you have to take the good with the bad. And bananas are harvested green and allowed to ripen in a cool, dark place, although home quantities will ripen absolutely fine on the counter. And if you really have a lot of bananas out there, you might want to bring some in that are still angular. So now you have all these bananas, and what do you do with them? This is the first year we had a big crop, and we were kind of excited about it. So we cut them all the same day, which really wasn't a fine thing to do because we had to figure out what to do with them. But still, they're all ready at the same time. So we did a lot of, we shared them. We ate them in a lot of different ways because bananas are very nutritious. They're high in potassium, very good for you. It's a snack that will stay with you because they digest a little slower because of the total dietary fiber and the carbs in them. And they really are a good snack. And the dwarf Cavendish, they're a little smaller than the grocery store banana, and they're just the right size for young kids. So this is another thing that we did. We made frozen banana ice cream. And when you take the bananas and first of all, you freeze them and cut them up like that. And you put them in the food processor and process them. And there's an enzyme in them that when it's been whipped enough, it starts to thicken. And it's just really kind of magic. So you have to keep an eye on them because all of a sudden that this concoction will thicken. And at that point, you can flavor it any way you want to. Delicious and good for you. Still has natural sugar in it. So you have to think about that. And one of the most popular things we do is to dehydrate them into snacks, dip them in orange juice, that's ascorbic acid, put them in the dehydrator. I now have 2 of them, and this is regular and chocolate. Also, there's banana bread. It's just you have to have banana bread if you have bananas, and you can freeze them. And this is freezing ripe bananas, sliced or whole, are best used within 2 to 3 months, and that's from USDA. And then you can use them any way you want, and you can freeze your banana baked goods, although they never last that long at my house. So finally, you can share with others, and I've been known to. We put a bunch of bunches, hands in the car and driven around and gifted to our friends, and they're always graciously accepted. So it's a taste of success. And finally, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Julie and Carol behind the scenes, who's been helping me look good and make sure all the things happen that need to happen so that I can not worry about them. And I want to thank, most of all of you who came tonight. I hope you found some answers to some things that you wanted to know. And I always have an artful picture at the end of my programs, because I want to remind you that gardening is supposed to be fun. And so, like I said, when I go outside to play, not to work, even though I get a lot of work done. So these are the resources that will be helpful, that I used for most of this presentation, along with my personal experience.